Hello, everyone. My name is Rudy Patel. I'm the president and founder of UCLA Legal, and I'm so excited here to have our virtual media participants, which are going to be Ashley, Malcolm, Angel, and Samantha. We're really excited to have you guys here, and I'm sure all of the members that are going to be watching it virtually and in person are excited just as much as we are. With that said, would you guys like to begin by introducing yourself? And we can start with Angel.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Angel. I am an associate in a big law firm in Washington, D.C. I practice venture capital law, represent companies and investment firms. I also do like M&A and just like a general corporate lawyer. So really happy to talk about that and just my experience as like a legal influencer, really. So I'll pass it to Samantha.
Hey everyone, my name is Samantha Simpson. I am a fourth year also at a corporate law firm. I practice investment funds. I'm currently in London, but also practice in New York.
All right. Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Stanley. I am also a big law managing associate. I am technically working out of my firm's Chicago office, but I work mostly in entertainment, sports, and media. So I tend to work with our Century City office the most. And I'm physically located in Nashville, Tennessee.
It's very confusing.
I know, a lot of locations.
My name's Macklin Stanley. I was at a big law firm for a year, then actually left that to start my own firm. And yeah, happy to talk about that route and our legal influencer sphere as well. Either topics are great.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Now we're going to go ahead and get started with our first question. So our first question is, all of you have attended and graduated from law school. Can you please share the law school you attended, if you take a gap year before attending, and the current field of law you practice in? So I know many of you guys mentioned you're currently in big law, but does that mean that you work in international law, or if it's what specific field within corporate law that you practice in?
So, yeah, we can go first on this one. So we both met on our first day at Harvard Law School. So that's where we attended law school. I did not take a gap year. I know Macklin did, so I'll let him talk about that.
Anyone who follows our content might not know that we went to Harvard Law. We're very modest about it.
Right. Yeah, it's the last thing we want to talk about. Yeah. So, and like I said, I practice entertainment, sports, and media transactional law. So anything to do with contracts, I don't touch the courtroom. But I do a lot of work in film and TV, venturing into the music space, often with people who want to pay big law rates. So typically big companies, and often when they're seeking financing. So I've gotten a bit of a specialty in that, fundraising or securitizations or credit agreements. It sounds all very fancy and exciting, I know.
It sounds boring to me.
Yes, but, that was the joke.
Yeah. So so she already mentioned the law school, and I'm a solo practitioner, and I primarily focus on employment discrimination, and I hyper focus on sexual harassment, representing victims of sexual harassment, and I also even represent victims of sexual assault in the civil system as well. That's what I primarily focus on. But to be candid, when you have your own firm, especially in the newer stages, I've taken on everything. I mean, I've done a boat contract, I've done a mold case. So I'm kind of a generalist in that sense. And I was in litigation when I was in big law. So I still primarily do litigation.
I can also jump in here, not as exciting, but I practice specifically investment funds. I started investment funds, so I was never in a general corporate pool. I work with big companies mainly, but also with high net worth individuals, variety of fundraisers from small, mid-level to big fundraisers. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and we met at Columbia Law School. That's where we went. So we were in the same section, which is really funny. So we met like the first day of law school. I asked Samantha to be my study group, and we were friends ever since then. So that's kind of where we met. But my practice specifically, I represent a lot of startups and really just emerging companies looking for venture capital financing. So a lot of my work deals with a lot of like the tech companies that you hear about in the news. Like a lot of those are our clients, and we just kind of help them secure like their investment funds, basically their venture capital rounds. We do all the contracts for that, all the investment agreements, and a lot of times when people want to invest in your company, that money comes with strings attached. and those strings attached are our contracts essentially. So I kind of help with drafting those and negotiating those agreements. So yeah, fun stuff.
And can I actually ask a question really quick? Is the audience here tailored more to everyone who's watching and might watch pre-law at the undergraduate level? Is that the just so I can kind of tailor my
It's members of the undergraduate pre-law
who might not have any idea what big law or like means, because I didn't know what that meant in undergrad, but maybe we can get into that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So primarily our members are women in law in the undergraduate level. So all of our members are part of UCLA's undergraduate area, and we come from different majors, whether that be poli-sci, economics, etc. And I think it would be helpful if you guys would kind of explain and break down what big law is as we go through and things of that nature. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Naomi. I'm going to be your second interviewer today for today's event. And I know that Ashley and Macklin went to Harvard Law, and then Angel and Samantha went to Columbia Law. So the second question is, how did you guys decide that law school was for you? Did you guys have any mentors, guidance, counselors, or anybody influential in your life that helped shape your career path?
Yeah, I definitely did. So at college, I went to Duke for like my undergrad school. So we had a pre-law advisor on campus, and I was in his office every single day. Like, what should I do? How do I apply to schools? Like, we were on like a first name basis by the time I graduated. So honestly, I leaned on him a lot, just for like his guidance and to see just what to do, because I didn't necessarily have anyone in my personal life that I knew that was going to law school and that could kind of help me out there. But as I made like my ambitions known, like throughout like my college years, I started to connect with upperclassmen who were like thinking of going to law school. So one of my mentors, I consider her a mentor, she was a senior when I was a freshman, and she went to Columbia. And so I kind of got to speak with her throughout her whole process, and like followed her on Instagram, and she was like navigating like her Columbia lifetime, and just kind of getting advice from her. So she was really instrumental for me, like deciding to go to Columbia, knowing what the experience would be like, even deciding to travel abroad while I was in law school. I didn't know that was an option. I knew that was an option because I followed her and kind of spoke with her pretty often. So for me, having mentors was essential, and I gained them throughout college. So what y'all are doing right now is exactly what you need to be doing, joining like a group of similarly minded people that can kind of like share resources and help you decide like where to go and what path is best for you.
Yeah, and I can jump in. I had kind of an opposite experience. I had a great mentor in college. So I got my master's in psychology before law school. So I went to Cornell for undergrad and found a great mentor there who really helped me along the way. I'm a first generation student as well. I actually started at community college and then transferred to Cornell. So it's a whole long saga, but he wanted me to pursue a PhD in psychology. So I actually did the opposite of what my closest mentor told me to do. Because I just always had an interest, and I've actually found I still write a column for Psych today. And I think the law does have, especially in the litigation sphere and in law school, you talk about psychology too. So I found it very interesting. So I always had a personal interest in the law, really didn't have any family members who were lawyers, no mentors, and kind of just went with it. And I found just researching online, there's a wealth of information these days. There's a popular forum, toplawschools.com. I don't know, at least there was. I mean, there's an abundance of like online forums where applicants will talk, and you'll talk numbers and you'll talk like strategies and stuff. So that's what I use primarily.
Wait, what forum was that?
I think it was toplawschools.com, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Or then there was another, there's a few though. Do you have one in particular?
No, I was curious. I was like, what are these forums? I missed that. I should.
Oh yeah, no, it was, oh man, I was so neurotic about it. I was like every day checking it, like what are people doing? And like we knew the days that like admissions were coming out because everyone was posting about it. So you're like freaking out the whole day. It was a blessing and a curse, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I similarly thought that I was going to get a PhD in psychology. All of my mentors were in psychology. I went to Alabama for undergraduate. And I was in the psychology honors program, had taken the GRE, and then had some family members who had some strong opinions, but they made me think about what choices I was making. And one of the questions that they asked is what kind of practical impact I wanted to have on the world, and how could my degree be harnessed to do that. And I think that there's a lot of one-on-one impact that I saw myself being able to have with a PhD in psych. but I wanted to have a broader reach, and maybe that's a bit grandiose for where I was in life, but that was my reasoning. So I thought, well, I've got a psychology degree. I definitely can't get a job with that, right? But that's not true. You can, but that was my thought process at the time. And so I thought I've got to go to graduate school of some type, I guess law school, maybe. And I applied around. I made friends who were applying to law school, but no one who was really an authoritative voice on the matter. And I would definitely encourage all of you to seek out good mentors, even if you personally don't know anybody who is in law school or has authoritative advice. Putting your intentions out there. We were just at a class recently from one of our old professors, and his advice was great advice, which was, it's not your first order connections that are going to be the best connections for you. It's who those people know, or who those people know that they know. And it's, second and third order who will have something that they can help support you with. So just putting your thoughts out there, your intentions out there, and letting your network work for you to help find somebody who's similarly situated. That was great advice that probably answers a different question you were going to ask, the advice I would give myself in undergrad.
So I also didn't know immediately going in that I wanted to go into law school. I was really good at science and math in high school, so I just assumed that I was going to do that. And then when I got in, my institution was a bit unique in the sense that you were able to test out different classes during a 2-week orientation period, which I know is not common. So I tried everything and I hated all the sciences and the math. So I was just like, what am I going to do? And I gravitated towards a political science professor, and that's just how I started to go down the poli-sci route. Still didn't know I wanted to go to law school. My first summer, I did an internship at City Hall in my hometown. And from there, I really, really enjoyed the type of work that they did. So I also sought out mentors. I joined a program at my school that was called Sister to Sister, where we really were introduced to a bunch of different lawyers. And there was a unique theme as I met each of these people. And it was just like, even if I didn't want to practice law, they all had very powerful voices. And I knew that people listened to them. So I knew I wanted to be one of those women. So from there, I kind of sought out the law school route. I did a bunch of internships and programs, highly recommend programs, because I learned so much from those programs. I had no idea what big law was until maybe my junior year of college, and I was able to intern at a big law firm. So I thought that was all really interesting. And then from there, I just sought out the law school route, and been happy ever since.
Thank you for those answers. I think that I guess the key takeaway is finding mentors is really important, whether that be in your family or if it's through professors and counselors. And something that I wanted to say is because originally I didn't know what big law was either, because I'm the first in my family to pursue a career outside of like the industry my parents are in, where they like manage motels. And the way I found out what big law was actually during COVID. I watched a video of Angel and Sam. You guys talked about what big law was. That's why I was also really excited, because I watch all of you guys' videos frequently. So I was just looking forward to this interview a lot. But with that said, our next question is, I know some of you mentioned that you guys are first generation lawyers, and that means navigating the legal field is challenging. So our next question is, did you know what field of law you wanted to practice in before attending law school? If not, are there any resources in place to help you narrow down the specific field of interest?
I can say that I had no idea now. And even if I had a conception of it upon entering law school, I definitely changed while there. What happened was another mentor. I had a law school mentor that I met who taught a class on gender violence, then a workshop on gender violence and domestic violence. And I got really interested in that work, and just kind of, was a research assistant for her, took all of her classes. We formed a great relationship. I still talk to her all the time. So I developed my interest in my field of law while at law school. Before, I definitely had no idea.
Yeah, I had a good sense, even though I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a business lawyer, like whatever that means. Like I didn't really know what that entailed, and I kind of just like I'm one of those people that take like the Google test of like what I should do for a living or whatever. They always would say, I like Samantha, I liked math like in high school. So I was like, I'm just something with math, something with numbers. So I kind of was like, I either need to go like the business route and get my MBA, or I need to go to law school and get my JD and be a business lawyer, or do both. I also like consider doing like a JD MBA. So I knew like in some way or fashion, I wanted to like incorporate business into what I did professionally. So I knew in that sense. I didn't know that business law is such a broad term, and that there's actually like there are so many specialties within that. So I didn't know that I'd end up being a venture capital lawyer specifically. Like that's it's pretty niche and it's very specific. I think that interest kind of came as I was practicing and learning more about different practice groups. Like you really learn how broad the law is once you start practicing, which I know is like super helpful. But once you start to see what people do and see like all the niches that exist, you start to realize like, oh, I didn't even know that I might be interested in that. But now I see my firm has that practice group, or whatever it might be. So I got interested in this specifically as I started to practice, but I always knew I was going to be like on the transactional, like business side of law, which like I pretty much am right now. So
I will say I figured out what I wanted to do more throughout law school. Going in, I think I wanted to do entertainment or something like that on my personal statement, but you really do not know what you want to do when you're in college, and that's perfectly fine. No one expects you to know what you want to do, which is great. You start to get introduced to law firms, public interest, all these different routes that you had no idea even existed. And the way I kind of chose my trajectory was that I did an internship my 1L year at the Bank of New York Mellon, and I started to work with wealth management firms and wealth management clients. And I just thought it was really interesting to look at high numbers and see how it interacted in the real world. And then from there, when I summered at a law firm, I specifically went into investment funds group, and I just liked the people. I liked the kind of work we did. And it was something that I could see myself doing for at least the next 5 years. And who knows what the other 5 years or the other 5 years after that will, entail. But from there, that's how I see it. And I agree with Angel. I see different practice groups, different lawyers, different kind of everything, even till this day. And I think literally different lawyers emerge every day. So like now there's a lawyer for digital assets, which just didn't exist 10 years ago. So, it's interesting. It's important and interesting to keep your mind open about the things you want to do. And just, if you don't know what you want to do, that's completely fine as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't know what kind of law I wanted to do really until I started practice, but don't tell the people that I work for that. I mean, I applied and said my stated interest was entertainment law, but when I got to law school, I joined what first years called an SPO, a student practice organization. You had to be a second year law student to be in a clinic, which is the first kind of practitioner experience that you get. But student practice organizations were kind of little mini clinics. And I joined one called the Recording Artist Project that helped recording musicians pro bono. So they didn't have to pay anything, and they came, and our work was overseen by a licensed attorney, but we were kind of getting our feet wet with what it's like to actually be an attorney for a recording artist. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. I've always been interested in consuming creative products. I myself don't view myself as a creative, but I would love to be a part of that process in the way that I can contribute my own skills. And so that was a story that I told people in interviews, and I believed it to the extent that I could know what that meant at the time. And then when I started practicing, I realized, okay, no, this is actually a good fit. Luckily, I look back and think I've stumbled into a lot of things in life that included. But I would definitely encourage you in law school to try clinics, do any kind of practical experience that you can get your hands on to actually see what you like in practice, as opposed to in theory, just learning about.
Thank you so much for your responses. So our next question is, you guys all went to law school, you survived it, you graduated. What are 3 words that you guys can use to explain your experience and why?
ooh,
Met my wife.
That's a cop-out.
that's a good one.
I'm sticking with that. That's mine. That's my answer. Have fun with the real
yeah.
answer.
Maybe we can popcorn one at a time so I can think of 3. my first one is stressful. I'm trying to come up with a synonym for stressful, but it was stressful because of the comparison. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and again, because I went straight through from undergrad, I don't regret that experience, but I also don't think that I had a good context for where school fell in the importance in life and grades and being able to find a balance. For me, I think I could have benefited from some time in between,
Yeah, I think,
looking back.
yeah, I was a teacher and got my master's before law school. And I think we had very different stress levels in law school just because it just, yeah, I mean,
I had let school up until that point define who I was. The grades that I got defined how good where I fell in the educational hierarchy, which is the only hierarchy I'd ever been a part of. So that's one word. Maybe somebody else has a positive word to follow up with.
I guess mine is a bit indifferent, but I thought about unpredictable because there were tons of experiences that I had in law school that I didn't expect to have. Like I studied abroad in South Africa. Who would have envisioned that when I would have started law school? But then on the other side, it was stressful at times, and sometimes it was even fun. So I think that's one that umbrella term that really captures it.
Yeah, I would say so. Samantha and I, we went straight through as well, and so I did realize after I started, I was like, okay, I can see why people take a break because it is kind of a lot. But for me, I guess I just have one word. I would say transformative because and maybe that was partly the age, starting law school at 22, but also just like being in New York City and just having the law be like not what I expected. Like the law is just so conservative, and I feel like I had an idea of that, but it was really in my face in law school. Is just how like even the things that we didn't discuss in the classroom that I thought we would, and so it really changed the way I think, not necessarily just from like the lectures and like what I was being taught, but, like the environment, and starting to think critically about like even legal education in general. So I feel like it was definitely transformative for like the way I think in general, but definitely about the way I think about education, the way I think about the law and like the role it plays in our society. And just personally just growing and being in an environment in New York City that I had never been in before and how much that changed me. So that'll be my word.
Thank you, guys. I know that we mentioned that law school is transformative, unpredictable, and also very stressful. Do you guys think that law school actually prepared you to practice outside of a school setting?
I think I learned everything that I use
think
in my job in my job. That I don't know that that's a really hot take. I think law school, yes, it's in your question, law school taught me how to think, not how to practice, which has value and has its place, but I don't think I learned many practical skills in law school.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say many people do say it doesn't teach you how to practice the law, but I think that I have definitely drawn on some of the transferable skills that I learned in law school when it comes to analyzing documents, when it comes to even communicating. I took a bit of unconventional classes. For example, one class I took was lawyer leadership. And I definitely think I learned a lot of skills that I use every day when it comes to team building, when it comes to communicating, when it comes to talking to clients. And even sometimes I have come across a few instances where I have substantively found like stuff that I've learned in corporations and other classes to be helpful in actual practice.
Yeah, same. I agree with both. Like we draft contracts all day, and like that I didn't learn in law school. Like they surprisingly like don't teach you like how to draft an actual contract. But like when it comes to so they call a lot of classes in law school black letter law classes, and those are just the classes that teach you what are supposed to be the foundational legal concepts. And I didn't find many of those classes to be directly relevant with what I do on a day-to-day basis. But like my clinics and my externships and I took like a negotiation seminar, those have been helpful because they teach you like the soft skills of communication, like Samantha said. And like when I draft emails, they'll teach you like a method to respond to questions in law school called PREAC. And like when I draft emails till this day, I still kind of think of that and like, let me get to the point as soon as possible because people may not read the whole email. And so they're like oddly, like tangentially, there are things that are like relatable when you start practicing, but the heart of what you do in law school, I would say, is different than actually like practicing on the day-to-day.
I totally agree with everything. I think the soft skills that you learn in some unique classes, not the black letter law classes, definitely like negotiation workshop. We took a leadership and an innovation class that I found actually most helpful. And I think just like the work ethic that law school first year requires, like I doubt, unless you were like a hardcore science major, I don't know, I wasn't one, and maybe that was like a terrible undergrad experience, I don't know, but like 1L law school is like it sucks. I mean, workload wise. So just like training yourself, be like, yeah, I can handle this and like I can do that and I can survive. Because big law will do that to you as well.
Thank you so much for your advices, your experiences. It sounds pretty stressful, but also sounds pretty fun. So hopefully for undergraduates who still want to go into law school. But I guess our next question is, could you please describe a typical work day in your life? Example, how many hours you work, meetings you sit on, networking events you attend?
Yeah, so I can start with that one. So one of the things I love and one of the things that I don't necessarily love on my job is that every single day is different. And so I truly do not have a typical day. Like there have been days where I've woken up at like 6 a.m. and I've worked from 6 a.m. to midnight on just like the deal that has to get closed, and my client is running out of money. And if we don't close this financing, they can't make payroll on Friday. So like the ultimate like just stress situation that actually matters. And then there are days where I don't have much to do and I may bill an hour, and like there's just like it's just one of those slower days. And so my days vary, and I sometimes will have like internal meetings and we'll have like a practice group meeting, or I might go to a networking event after work or a happy hour. Some days I don't have that at all. So it really changes for me. I would say one thing that's consistent is that I'm always like writing emails, and we get emails constantly every single day. So that never really changes. I have calls with clients, and that never really changes either. But in terms of like a schedule like you have like in college, or like you'll have in law school, like Mondays I do this and I go to this class, and Tuesday I do this, like it hasn't necessarily been like that for me to practice. And then when you throw in like the things that we do on the side, like Samantha and I have like an investment property together, so sometimes we have to like work with our property manager, and we also like have our YouTube channel, we have to record videos. So it's no day is the same. Like that's the one thing that's consistent, is that it's inconsistent.
Yeah, totally agree. My days vary a lot, which is not a particularly helpful answer, but it is a truthful one. My longest day, I pulled an all-nighter and started work at 6 a.m. and finished work at 6 a.m. and then did another day. So I mean, it was like a full, and it was the same situation. That's an outlier situation. I want to be very clear.
She was great to be around.
I was not a lot of fun for those like 48 hours. But then my shortest day, I didn't log on at all, and I have my email on my phone and I checked. And so there's a huge amount of variance. It depends on your workload, how many clients you're working with, what part of the deal process that you're in. I know if you're a litigator, then you might be going to court, and then you're in court all day, and leading up to the day that you're in court, or days, weeks that you're in court, you're around the clock being super prepared, and you want to be prepared for every contingency. So there's a lot of variation. Yes to the emails. I don't check my email for longer than an hour unless I'm asleep. Yes to client meetings, much more Zoom meetings these days, which will surprise nobody. It used to be a lot of phone calls, which was a little freeing. You could untethered walk around, your office, or be at the mall or wherever, as long as I couldn't hear background noise. And now it's like, I need my professional backdrop behind me. What other consistencies are there? Or for you guys, what other consistencies are there?
So for me, there's a bit more predictability because of the practice group that I'm in. I'm in investment funds, as I said before, and that's partially part of why I chose it. So when you're on a ongoing matter, as Angel described a little bit, it is kind of like always going. So you're going to be working on Saturday and Sundays. You're not going to be working at a certain time. And then when it's a bit slower, it's slow again, still checking emails every day, still answering emails, but okay, you can log off tonight when you go to sleep. You can log off the next day. You won't really work around the clock for the whole year, if that makes sense. But then also, if I had to describe a bit, when it is really busy, what my practice group looks like are calls all day, and then kind of doing document review and responding back to emails and everything in the evenings, just because you're on go. Like a lot of my clients will have 100 people investing at a time, or 100 companies investing at a time. So it's really just like calls all day, led sometimes at the junior level, a lot of times at the senior level. And then also for a junior attorney, a lot of what it looks like in my practice group is being very, very organized and keeping track of everything, which you will hate when you start practice. But thankfully, the more senior you get, the less you do it. But you really just have to keep the team in order, whether that's through a checklist method, whether that's like through a to-do list method, whether that's sending out emails all day. But that really does fall on you. So you're doing that on top of all the other work.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh,
Sorry.
my answer is not that interesting anyways, so.
No, please. Go ahead.
Well, I will say, I think like, with the exception of maybe some government jobs or nonprofits or some in-house, few legal jobs, at least in the private sector, are like 9 to 5, Monday through Wednesday. I think everyone should know that, Monday through Friday. I wish it's Monday through Wednesday. Today Wednesday, is that why I said that?
Thursday.
No,
It's
I
Thursday.
have no reason for saying that. In my solo practice, it's very similar. I'm pretty much on call all the time, but I have my own flexibility, which is nice. And there's definitely periods of ups and downs where you have a lot of work because something's happening, or some days I take the whole day off because I just had like a really busy 3 days. So it definitely fluctuates. And I think with the JD, I've also started like a business on the side as well. So I do some of that as well. And then we have our content creation. So the days are very, not the same any day. Some days we pump out a video and that's like the main content day. And some days it's like work. So it just depends.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
I'm also glad, I just wanted to add one more thing. The fact that he said that we're always on call, I think that's really important because a lot of people don't really understand what that means. So we've all talked about answering our emails all day. So if you try to compare it to, let's say, a doctor who isn't working on Wednesday and who isn't on call, so they can just do whatever they want. When you work in a corporate law field or a big law field, you literally can get an email at 11 at night and you're just back to work. And that's like you're never off, except for possibly on weekends, but possibly not. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That is a really good point. I didn't know that you guys are always on call. That seems like a lot. And I guess that kind of goes on to our next question, which is with all the responsibilities you have to juggle, such as being content creators, lawyers, and managing side projects, how do you manage a proper work-life balance? And is that even attainable?
So my approach, I can't remember who told me this or if I came up with this myself, but I do not, so like we mentioned earlier, I think Ashley said, like we're used to being in school, and like if you go to law school, you've been in school for 20 something years. And so our brains are trained to think of things of ways of like grades. And I think I had to kind of unlearn the concept of like trying to get an A in everything at once. Like to get into law school, like you need a lot of A's, you need good grades, you need to go on the LSAT. Like it's important to be good at a lot of things at one time because they want a well-rounded candidate. You have to have like good essays, good recommendation letters, good grades. And so everything kind of has to be at like that top level. I think like now that I'm in real life, I guess you can say, like I'm not in school, I've tried to unlearn thinking I have to have an A in everything all the time. So like there are going to be some weeks where like I didn't eat that great, and it's just like it is what it is because I was busy at work and that was important and I had to order in. Or there are going to be some weeks where like I don't speak to my family every single day because I was doing something else. So like I've kind of, the way I find balance is I'm not going to have balance like at everything all at once, but I can have a balanced month, or I can have a balanced week, or a balanced 2 weeks. So I try to like expand my time frame and like look at balance that way. But I do think that being in a demanding profession and, having multiple businesses and, hopefully y'all maintain your friendships and relationships and like your family relationships, whatever that looks like, it is pretty difficult to have an all day, like an A day, all day, every day. I think like that's maybe not necessarily realistic, but like maybe you have Sundays where you make sure you call your family that day, or whatever it might look like. So that's how I approach it. I try not to be too hard on myself because it is really hard to like juggle everything and try and like stay on top of everything every single day. But I kind of take it step by step and just try to prioritize and like focus on what I can the days that I can. So but yeah, I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts. That's kind of how I approach my life.
No, I think that's beautiful, not having an all A day every day and everything. That's really freeing.
Expanding the time horizon is a
Yeah.
good.
I like
different
that. I'm
person.
gonna be using
We're
that.
still actively struggling to figure out how to balance it.
Right. I mean, I think most people who are high achieving don't feel like they have it all figured out. And so learning and talking to other people, feeling like you're not insane and other people struggle with this too is important. A good piece of advice that I got recently was to do things in the order of importance, not in the order of urgency. And that's been particularly useful for me with clients who always want something immediately right now. And it's very easy to fall into the habit of just responding to the thing with the earliest deadline, and then you let the most important things fall behind. So giving myself permission to not always meet an externally imposed deadline, which is definitely a behavior I had to unlearn coming out of school. That was very freeing. Realizing at some point in my legal career, I started to learn, and I don't know that I've fully internalized, but I'm working on ending my day without having finished my entire to-do list is okay, because to-do lists are ever growing. And sometimes you just have those days where you're putting out fires constantly, and you don't get to do a single thing that you thought you were going to get done that day. And I know that that was true for me in undergrad as well as it is now, and it just exacerbates over time. So those are some things I try to think of. Meditation, thinking of my breath. I mean, those kinds of things that I always heard and really brushed off. Don't brush them off. Make a habit of that early on. I would highly recommend that. And if anybody has any other tips, please shoot them my way, because I'm always trying to get better.
Yeah, I echo that as well. I feel like it's something that I'm actively also working on. Like, I don't think that I always have balance, but the way I try to implement it the best I can is through scheduling everything. And that's beyond work. So the gym, like, treat the gym like a client call, and don't just skip it because you have an actual call to make or anything like that. Like, treat everything that's important in your life with importance, and kind of like evaluate your values. Because if you put work first, you're either going to burn out or you're eventually going to start to despise it. So I feel like I was at a point reaching a period of burnout, and I had to kind of prioritize other things in my life. And from there, I found a better balance. So that's also a piece of advice I have.
Yeah, that's all great advice. All advice that I do not act on, and I need to, because it's yeah, I mean, burnout's real. I have a problem with taking on too many things at once. I just like doing stuff. I wrote a book, and I'm writing a second book, and then the side business and the content and the legal, and then like I have some volunteer stuff that I do, and I'm always wondering, like, why am I doing this to myself? But I think the one that I like the most, which is really helpful, is that I do sometimes at least try to do, is like the gym. Like, working out for me is very cathartic and mentally a good thing, and like treating that as like a sacred time that I like don't bring my phone or something like that, or maybe bring it, but like try not to look at it. I think, yeah, setting boundaries is the one thing I try to really do a lot.
Thank you so much for your input on that question. Our next one is going to be more female oriented in law. So as you know, we're an all women's legal club. So Macklin can still put his advice into this, but this is more for women in general. For females who are in the law career that's predominantly run by men, how do you stay confident and focused on achieving your missions and your goals?
I guess I can start. For me, I think that's where mentorship is the most important, because obviously we know it's, like you said, it's dominated by men, but also there aren't a lot of women of color, and there aren't a lot of Black women, to be specific. So one, I seek out Black women mentors, but also I seek out any kind of mentors, because I guess having some affirmations in that way is really helpful. And also running your goals past certain people, having someone who's more senior who can actually tell you, give you honest feedback, because honest feedback is also something that isn't given to women as much as men, which is unhelpful if you're trying to grow. So mentorship, that's how I try my best to navigate that.
Yeah, and just bouncing off of that, for me, it's community. Like, even though I'm at my second law firm at this point, but there was, a group of Black women that I hung out with a lot in my last firm, and kind of had like a group chat. We would just kind of vent in there and keep each other sane. And I think like having that safe space was really helpful to not think like, am I crazy, or does he like micromanage me more than like the other male associate on the deal team? And they'll be like, no, I had that same experience with him. And so that kind of like validating space has been like essential for me, having Samantha, like especially when we live together and like bounce ideas off of each other and like bounce like email drafts off of each other, like all those little things are helpful. So like, I mean, mentorship is obviously like very important, but like networking across is important as well. Like kind of building that community with other women just to have that sanity check moment and know that it's not you, it's like the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I would piggyback off of the mentorship point as well, for sure. I've had excellent male mentors, but it's by female mentors who have gotten me through some really hard times in my career, because I think representation matters so much. I can look at people that I admire their legal product, but I can't see myself following in their shoes because they took a different route to get there. And there's one mentor that I have in particular. I just changed firms about 6 months ago for the sole reason that she changed firms. She just had her first kid. She took a full 6-month maternity leave. I watched her take it and not answer emails. I've watched her carve out time for her family. She'll say things like, you know, on a daily basis, I've blocked on my calendar from 5 to 7. I like to pick my daughter up from work and stay offline until she goes to sleep. And for the most part, 90% of the time, she has stuck to that. So watching good behaviors, you know, reasonable behaviors that I can model or implement in my life be modeled for me has made all the difference, because I've had lots of people that I admire their careers, but can't see bridging the gap from where I stand to where they stand.
In my opinion, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, we're gonna mute now.
Thank you for your guys' answer. It's really refreshing to hear that once you're in your firm, you can still find mentors, and there are people that are making a consistent effort to have a more balanced life. And I guess with that, since we have less than like 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that some of our members, their questions are also answered while respecting your guys' time. One of the questions that we have from the chat is, how has working with social media changed or formed your understanding of the law, or otherwise changed what you thought your career would be like?
I have a quick answer to that one. I think it's so important to be able to convey we know so many things because we went to law school, right? And your client wants to know those things. And I've watched so many attorneys not be able to communicate effectively, whether that's because they're too up here with the theory, they assume a baseline understanding that the client doesn't have. And so being able to convey to non-lawyers important legal information and digestible pieces, which is what our social media platform aims to do, is so important and is a skill that is undervalued in the legal sphere, I've found.
I would definitely say the same. And my clients are not business people or executives, you know, they're everyday people. So definitely, like, in employment law can be very confusing. So like, it's definitely helped me distill things and that talent, that skill of being able to do that. And yeah, I think the other prong of that question was change the career. I mean, it's possible that it could have changed we'll see, you know, we're in an interesting part now. We're approaching 1 million followers on TikTok. We're like about to hit it, but for some reason Instagram is not nearly as big. So follow us on Instagram, please. I'm kidding. So that, you know, we have an agent now, and like we're talking to some people about doing a high level podcast and even like a TV show, and all these things might not pan out at all, of course, but you know, just things are being talked about. So who knows what happens. We still very much like our current situation. Everything's great, but you never know.
Thank you for your responses. Our next question in the chat is from Miriam. She asks, if you knew everything that you know now, is there anything you would change about what you did?
I mean, since I know that you all are in college, I would have so I think my process of getting to law school, in hindsight, I did everything alone when I didn't have to. Like, I studied for the LSAT by myself, and I just had this whole solo journey, which when I got to law school and I met my friends there, and they're like, oh, we had study groups for the LSAT, and we all rolled over together. And I do think that communal aspect would have been helpful. So one thing I would have told myself was to find people on campus, or to find people, or just to be open and put it out there, like Ashley said earlier, and say listen, I'm trying to get into law school, who else is trying to do this? Let's do this journey together, because I don't think it had to be as lonely as it was. And so a lot of my friends from college, like Duke, a lot of like Black Duke students are like pre-med. So a lot of them were like taking the MCAT and like doing things that I just had no interest in. And so I felt like I had to like do this whole thing by myself, and I really didn't. So that's one thing I would tell myself, is to find other people and study with them and stick with them, and like, you know, make the journey could be more enjoyable. It didn't have to be as lonely as it was.
Yeah, I don't think I would do anything differently. But I will say that an issue that I was struggling with as I was deciding what law school to go to, was to go for the money or to go to the school that I really, 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 really wanted to. And I think that I graduated long enough where in hindsight, I don't regret it. So I wanted to add that in, that I actually do think I would do everything the same.
I agree. I often wonder how I got where I am and think what happened. So I would do it all the same. I don't know. Like, it's weird.
Yeah, seeing how things have turned out, I'm very happy with where I am now. There are mental health pointers I would have given myself earlier that I've shared over the course of this. Meditation is a thing that I just, again, shrugged off. Very important. Breath work, very important. Good mental health habits from early on. Anchoring your self-image and your self-value in something outside of school, hugely important. But as far as concrete steps that I've taken to get where I am, I can't say I regret anything.
But I will say I would try to not stress over every minor thing all the time. There's no need to do that. As you get older and older, I think you realize like you don't need to freak out about it. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone sucks sometimes. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for that. And leading on with it, our last question for today. I know you guys shared a lot of advice, but if you had any parting words for our undergraduate pre-law members, what would they be?
I can start because I feel like we've all been kind of downers during this. So like, I feel like it is a very rewarding career. And if you're interested in business and like consulting or law, I mean, like a JD can get you to a lot of different places. Everyone, you know, we've talked about the demanding workload, but like everyone's also very highly compensated. You can Google the big law salary scale. I mean, that's part of it. It can be a very rewarding, whether it's for the money, which hopefully that's not your sole desire, but there's nonprofit work. There's so much good stuff in the law as well. Or the big law stuff is also super interesting. I know I don't do it anymore, but she's always super interested in what she's doing. It sounds like they are as well. So I just want to make sure like everyone watching doesn't think like the law sucks and like the jobs are terrible. Like it is, you know, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I can only say that.
I think a lot of people right before I went to law school or right before I joined a big law firm spoke much more about the negative experience, which I am worried that I've now fallen into as well. And so I was over prepared for the negative aspects and underprepared for the really positive ones. So I will say on my behalf, and I'll let Samantha and Angela speak on their behalf, but I enjoy big law. It's when I sit down and think about what I want in a job, there are so many boxes that are checked. It's intellectually stimulating. I'm working on cutting edge things, really interesting clients and interesting matters. I'm working with smart people all the time. So, I mean, there are lots of really positive things about big law. You will get told all of the negative things, but there are positive things as well. Same thing with law school. I look back at my law school experience, and every time I'm on a law school campus, I'm filled with a feeling of potential and of hope, and how much change there can be by virtue of the people walking around on that campus and their brains and what they're learning and what they will do in life. So there's a lot of positivity out there as well to look forward to if you stick on a law path.
Yeah, I echo that as well. And I would say another piece of advice I have generally for law school, for college, what you're doing now is to follow your own path. So whether that comes to studying, if you have a way that you study, don't think that you have to completely adjust it because that's what everyone else in law school is doing. If you like to travel, there's still avenues to travel, like you were talking about with big law. Like I never thought I'd be working in London just because I wanted to, which is something that my big law firm has afforded for me to do. So, you know, stick to your values, follow what you want, follow the path you want to follow, and, you know, you'll figure it out. Don't stress too much in college. You know, be prepared, but you don't have to overly stress.
Yeah, my answer is so similar. I was just gonna say, like, don't be afraid to be different and do things differently than what everyone else is doing around you. That goes for law school and like once you start practicing. In so many ways, my law school career just was pretty unconventional. Like, not even just from studying abroad, but like I also like technically graduated early and like took the bar early, and I just did all these things and I mapped it out exactly the way I wanted to. And I didn't necessarily know anyone else that was doing that, but I'm like, someone else doesn't have to do it first. Like you can be the first one if you know that like your personality suits whatever path that you want to be on. And so I would just say it's going to be hard and they're going to try to make you conform, and like everyone might be going one direction, but if you know yourself, know your values, you are grounded and you stick to your purpose and why you're there in law school and why you decided to be a lawyer, like you can really forge your own path. Like this is a career with many paths, and you can even form your own like if you want to. So those are my parting words. Stay true to yourself, like always.
We just wanted to thank you guys all again, all of our speakers, for coming to this event, for saying yes to speak. I know you guys are zooming in from all around the world, so we're just so grateful that you took the time out of your day to do this for us. And also, we wanted to ask if we could take a Zoom picture for our Instagram, if that is okay with you guys. And our members want to open.
Yeah.
It's okay if you don't want to, but if you
We all sat up so much straighter.
Yeah, hold
I
on.
know. I'm like, let me zoom it. Let me get a little closer.
Flex a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, if any of our members want to also turn on their cameras, no pressure though, if you guys don't want to. And I'll go ahead and take the picture. Also stop the recording right now.